Hello and welcome to everyone joining us today. This session, this Career Office Hours session is presented by Coursera. And today we're going to be focusing on careers and skills for the future. And this is part one of a two-part series where we're going to be focusing on industry trends and skill trends. And we'll specifically look at the skills and career paths in demand, and also what you as a university student and graduate can do to actually upskill and remain in demand for those future-focused tech skills in the workplace. So just a brief overview of who we are at Career Leadership. Our manager is Janine Trutte, and so she'll be the person in charge of your career development path, and you'll see her for coaching and counseling. And then myself, Danielle Radloff, I'm the Senior Career Officer at Career Leadership. And I am the one you speak to if you want access to any of our platforms and resources. And today's guest is Dasha Kazunina from Coursera. She's a skills and transformation consultant in the EMEA region. And you'll hear a bit more from her in just a moment. So how would you get access to Coursera at Stellenbosch Business School? So I just want to remind everyone about our career leadership model. Our model is set up in a way to guide you through your career development process. And at every stage of the model, there's a variety of different resources you can access. So Hired Upskill is one of those resources. And this is where you would find access to Coursera at a reduced rate. And that rate is available specifically for schools that have partnered, that are in the Hired network, which is made possible by our EQUIS accreditation. So this is just one of many reasons that makes it an amazing place to be. And if you need assistance with actually getting access to Coursera via Hired, you can just let us know and we can send you the access guide, and you can even email or call us if you want assistance. So Dasha, you can take it from here.
Really excited to be here talking to students and graduates of this wonderful university. As Danielle mentioned, my name's Dasha and I'm a skills transformation consultant, which means that I work with universities across Europe, Sub-Saharan Africa, so South Africa obviously is in the mix, and the Middle East as well, in helping them innovate and ensure that they're providing the relevant skills for their students, particularly when it comes to employability and careers of the future. So that's my day-to-day role at Coursera. So I know that some of you would have heard about Coursera, but I think it's helpful to provide a little bit of context. Some of the discussion that Danielle and I were having were around, well, why should you be upskilling on top of your degree? Why is that important at the moment? And also, how do you know which company, which online education provider to go with? Because obviously there are a number of options. Well, first of all, Coursera is the biggest online education platform in the world. And we stand out a little bit from the other platforms in the way that we operate. So at the moment, we've got 100 million individual learners on the platform. This is globally, and these will be, university students, young people, as well as professionals. So often they'll be in their 30s and they'll be sort of mid-career professionals who are looking to reskill or upskill for a new job or a promotion, perhaps. Now, we only partner with 250 university and industry partners globally. That's around 170 universities and a similar number of employers, which means that we are incredibly selective about who creates content on Coursera. So generally, we go to universities and employers that we want to partner with, and that's based on emerging skills. So if we know kind of how the labour market is changing, we would go and seek out experts in those fields. So I'll show you a list of employers that we partner with, but certainly all of the leading universities, in their specific areas of expertise will be creating and contributing to the content in Coursera. So it's incredibly high quality and it's incredibly carefully selected to look specifically at emerging skills across the board. Now, many institutions, so businesses, governments, and universities use our content to upskill their own students and staff. So At the moment, we partner with over 7,000 institutions, which means these are the sort of organizations around the world that are using our content already to upskill their respective students and employees. So just to give you a sense of scale and how we're different from some of the other providers out there. Okay, so now a little bit about me and why I'm the person speaking to you today. So in terms of my background, I've worked in higher education for almost 10 years now. So I graduated almost 10 years ago. I worked for a company called QS World University Rankings. So they look at the best universities around the world and sort of place them in terms of how, how well they're doing in their research, their quality of teaching and learning, and of course, student employability. So we'll look at where your university ranks as well in the next slide. I've also spent time consulting corporate employers in the UK, so some of the world's biggest employers, on how to recruit the right graduates, how to attract and kind of find the exact skills that they're looking for to innovate their own businesses. So that's roughly my background, and that's the kind of knowledge that I'm bringing to the table today. But, there's a little bit about you that we need to speak about as well. First of all, you're studying at an excellent university. So it's one of the leading universities in South Africa, and certainly a very well-recognized university globally as well. So you can see that at the moment in the QS rankings, Stellenbosch ranks 454th overall globally. So that's obviously a really excellent result. But actually what Stellenbosch is really recognized for is its business programs. And I know that I'm speaking to business school students. So 161st in the QS executive MBA ranking. So the executive MBA is particularly recognized, but it just goes to show that the business education that you're getting is really globally recognized, which is great. However, we also know that the labor market is changing very quickly at the moment, and there are a number of factors contributing to that. Obviously, we've had the pandemic where we saw many companies as well as education institutions go digital, go online, change the way that they work, and change the types of skills that they're seeking. But also there's been a global, industrial revolution because of automation and technology, which means that actually there's a whole new range of skills that employers are seeking in the last 10 years that they haven't been previously. So we know from kind of data out there that 62% of employers are considering skills first hiring. So even when they're looking at graduates, they're no longer just looking at the university that you went to and the type of degree that you completed, even though that is important, but actually they're looking at how you're able to demonstrate the types of skills that you've learned and that you understand the types of skills that they're looking for as well. And 90% of employers say that they would hire candidates using a certificate, a digital badge, or something that's sort of globally digitally recognized instead of a degree. So we can see that that is really shifting, and the way that education is valued is also changing, which I think is an important context for this conversation. Okay, so obviously we're here to talk a little bit about South Africa and then give you global context as well. So I know many of you will be looking for careers within the country, but I'm sure you'll be interested to hear how things are changing on a global level as well. So first I wanted to, almost my entire session today is based on data that we have within Coursera and the 100 million learners that I mentioned. But I am pulling in some external resources as well. So first of all, when it comes to South Africa, we currently have over 600,000 learners on the platform. Obviously, that's a reasonable number. We would like to have many more, but it means that we can draw conclusions about the types of skills that South African learners are seeking on the platform. Of those 600,000, just over 10,000 are campus learners, which means university learners. So these are university students that are actively seeking to upskill in addition to their degree already. And some of the most in-demand occupations they're looking at, or they say they're interested in, are data scientist, software engineer, and data analyst. And I think that those roles are not entirely surprising because those roles are increasingly in demand globally because of the digital transformation that we're seeing and the fact that most organizations are becoming more data-led. So, these jobs will continue to be in demand for the next decade at the very least. Now, what's interesting, I think, is what are the sort of the skills that South African learners are seeking? And when I say over-indexing skills, I mean effectively it means that, you are seeking this skill more than the rest of the learners on Coursera. So, when we compare you to the global context, you really stand out in trying to build that skill. So you can see here that it's areas like audit and accounting, that are particularly over-indexing for South Africa. This is also true for project management, cyber attacks, which I think is particularly interesting. And then towards the end, we've got risk management and finance. So I think that there's a clear theme in the types of skills. We know that there's a thriving and sort of emerging finance sector in South Africa. There's an increasing number of opportunities, and that sector is really innovating as well in terms of, I suppose, data science areas and digitalization. And as a result of some of the innovation that we're seeing in the region, South Africa has become much more prone to cyber attacks. So, we see governments being more digital, we see businesses being more digital in how they operate, and therefore the risk with that is also increasing. So it's quite clear that some of the skills that learners are seeking are actually to plug those gaps and to be at the forefront of the labour market in terms of what they're able to offer. Apologies. So when we look at the University of Stellenbosch in particular, we already have 204 learners on Coursera. So these again will be effectively independent learners that are coming to Coursera to upskill and are recognizing the value of building additional employability skills. And they're enrolled in 302 programs. So, for each learner, usually they're doing, even more than one course or qualification on Coursera. Some of the competencies that these students are learning or seeking are listed here. So there's a little bit of overlap with what we saw for South Africa more broadly around finance and data, but you can also see that there's a range of other skills here as well. A lot of them are focused on programming and sort of the tech upskilling, machine learning, cloud computing. So kind of the cutting edge tech skills is what seems to be really at the heart of your university's students. Okay, so that's a little bit about what we see students learning, but actually how does South Africa compare to the rest of the sub-Saharan African region? So here we're just comparing it to the rest of the region. And actually we know that in many ways you're in a really strong position compared to the rest of the region, and you're leading, and certainly the higher education system is incredibly strong with some of the world's leading universities. However, when it comes to the labour market and employability, there are of course challenges. And what you're seeing here is sort of looking across a range of skills from business, tech to data science. We can see that, South Africa is currently lagging in a number of areas, and particularly those are business areas. So what does this mean for you? What it means is that if you're looking to effectively, start your career within South Africa, these are some of the skills that will be most in demand, right? So these are some of the skills where South Africa is currently falling behind according to our data. And actually, this is kind of good news for you because you're business students in some capacity, and you'll actually be bringing these skills to the South African economy. So again, it's just, this data is helping you recognize some of the strengths that you already have by studying your programs, and also any additional emerging areas that it would be really good for you to develop to ensure that you've really got the relevant skills for the market. So I'm not going to name them all. I can share the slides at the end of this session, but you can see, when it comes to business, you've got areas like accounting, which we saw people are learning, supply chain, human resources, business analysis, a hugely emerging area, very, very popular. But even areas like communication and entrepreneurship are lagging behind compared to some of your kind of competing countries. And I think the entrepreneurship is particularly interesting. I don't know if you guys would agree, where, we know that there's such huge potential for startups and change and new businesses. And actually, perhaps we're not seeing that the learners currently have the right skill sets to be able to do that effectively. So I think that's a real area of opportunity for South Africa. So in Coursera, we publish campus skills reports. Well, this is actually our first one, but we publish global skills reports every year, just looking globally across some of the emerging skills and skills that are lagging. And what we've learned about South Africa this year, looking at our data, is that there's a real opportunity for students to engage with digital skills, because actually there's a lot of opportunity when it comes to employment in those areas for both digital transformation and startup talent, as I mentioned. So the startup element is particularly fascinating, I think, for you guys as well as business graduates. And then if we look more specifically at the types of skills that are in demand and that you would benefit from, they are project management skills, risk management, we talked about cybersecurity, network security, and that being a growing area of concern, and of course the finance sector and all of the related skills within that. So I think it's given us a nice direction in terms of what you could be learning on top of your degree. So that takes me on to my next section is, well, what does this all mean? What should you personally be learning? So in general, when we look at skills that are most in demand, we find that globally across Coursera is these three areas in which skills are being most pursued. So that's data science, and that includes all of your data analysis and machine learning kind of knowledge. Business continues to be super relevant, and you're obviously well positioned for that. And thirdly, computer science, so the cutting edge tech skills, they are well ahead of all of the other areas and skills. And this is what we need for that fourth industrial revolution, also known as, kind of fueled by automation and tech. I thought it'd be useful to look specifically at what other business students are seeking on Coursera to kind of give you that guidance. So this is data from our campus skills report. I know it's a really sort of overwhelming chart, but effectively on the left, you've got all the skills that business university students are learning or seeking on Coursera. And on the right, you've got the types of roles that they're most interested in pursuing. So it means that these students feel that they perhaps are lacking some of the skills from their current universities, or perhaps could learn more about them. And then, some of the roles that they're most interested in. So if we were to summarize, leading skills that are being pursued are data analysis, business analysis, and finance. And I think when we think about the South African context, certainly we saw business analysis and finance as two really emerging areas where there's not enough talent at the moment. And data analysis is just, overall a role and a skill set that most employers will continue to need a lot in the next 10 years. And then in terms of the key roles that business students are pursuing, we see entrepreneur. So entrepreneurship is actually the number one thing that business students want to do. And you can see that a lot of the skills that they're building actually link back to this entrepreneurship pathway. And within that, you've got some core business skills, but you've also got a few multidisciplinary skills like research and design, for example, and also a number of emerging skills. So skills that are only just being developed that are going to be crucial for being a good entrepreneur, like machine learning, like business psychology, and kind of elements around that I think would be really helpful. The other key role that business students are seeking are marketing specialists. So marketing is a field that's changing massively through data and kind of digital marketing elements, which I think is interesting. And finally, business analysts, of course, that's a really direct career path. So to kind of support this data, not just from the student side, but also from the employer side, we've got some data from EFMD, and we can see that here they've surveyed employers, and you can see that these are some of the skills that employers are seeking from business graduates that actually fall outside of the traditional business school domains. So, business schools, of course, are very good at innovating, but they can't necessarily always keep up with how quickly we see the labor market changing. So highlighted here, the skills that are most in demand are decision-making in uncertain times. So, obviously there's been a lot of change, and there's going to be even more change with the recession coming post-pandemic. And it's how do you take in all of the data and input and make good decisions as a business leader, and how do you develop that skill set? AI, digital transformation, we've talked a lot about that. We see particularly many South African businesses and institutions undergoing this transformation right now, and that poses kind of both opportunities and risks. And then finally, data-driven decision-making, so being able to use data and capitalize on that going forward. We also have some of our own Coursera data where we're comparing business students on the platform with business professionals, and we look at the types of skills that they generally possess and what are some of the differences. So again, if you're looking to become a business professional, you can start to already invest in some of these skills because you know that actually you'll need them in the future and you might not have them at the moment. So for example, leadership and management is a top skill that all business students and professionals say that they have and they have developed. But something like statistical programming, actually there's a bit of a gap between what professionals end up doing in reality in their jobs and what business students come prepared with. Similarly, for software engineering, you can see there's a huge gap there. Computer programming is another area, and statistical programming as well. So I realize all of these areas sound very techy, and we're not suggesting that you should all become programmers, but actually what we are suggesting is that if you're going to lead businesses, you'll likely come across other programmers, engineers, and it's your ability to work with those colleagues, the ability to understand what they do and to lead a business, that's based on that kind of engineering knowledge, I think is going to be critical. So I know I've only got 10 minutes. I'm going to quickly talk about what you can do about all of this information that I've just given you. I mean, I would obviously encourage you to learn on Coursera. I'm going to quickly go through different types of content we have here. There's over 8,000 different types of courses, right? So there's a lot of information there for you. Hopefully this presentation has given you some guidance as to where to begin. But maybe two areas I wanted to highlight. One is we have guided projects, which are very short focus projects that are very hands-on. So you can learn a technical skill like programming or like using a project management software in literally 2 hours by having side-by-side instruction from the teacher and then actually going in and using that software and building something in real time. And that's a really useful thing to be able to show to your employers as well. And finally, we have professional certificates. So these are effectively, courses or content produced directly by employers for specific roles, which can really equip you well for the future. The rest, I think you're familiar with. The traditional courses you know about, specializations I'm sure you've heard about as well. So the professional certificates element is really interesting. This is, so these are the employers that we partner with, right? IBM, Google, Meta, or formerly known as Facebook, Salesforce, Intuit. And what they do is they create content for the types of roles that they're hiring for in terms of the kind of most in-demand skills. So you can see in your instance, cybersecurity analyst by IBM, a leader in cybersecurity is a professional certificate that we have on Coursera. So if you complete that certificate and you can demonstrate that to your future recruiters, that will put you in a really, really good position. We've likewise got project management from Google, which is an area that we identified as is important for South Africa. You've obviously got all of the data science roles, etc. So I think just a really interesting way for you to build your practical experience. And on the left, we've got all of the certificates that are live today, while on the right, we've got all of the ones that are yet to launch. So, we touched on marketing, you've got all of the developer courses here, as well as other areas like health, business analysis, etc. So the reason I think this is really useful for you is because not only does it give you the most relevant content, but it also guides you in terms of the types of careers that are most in demand at the moment. I'm going to skip past this and get to the key takeaways before I take any questions. So I think from my personal experience, if I was to kind of give you advice, first of all, build practical skills in emerging areas alongside your degree, because as we've seen, yes, you're in a great university, but actually the way that employers are hiring is changing. In being able to show that you're already engaging in some of those skills and you understand what they are is going to put you in a really good position. Secondly, research how things are changing. There is a lot of change. There will continue to be a lot of change in the next decade, as I mentioned, and it will be industry dependent. So, if you already know where you'd like to work, the kinds of areas you're interested in, if you want to be in South Africa or go global, do your research and make sure you're kind of investing in the right skills. And thirdly, embrace the mindset of adaptability and lifelong learning. We really see that shifting. There's a whole reason that Coursera exists is because even professionals are constantly updating their skill sets to stay relevant. So that's going to be our future. That is all from me.